Welcome everybody to another Civil 3D Lunch and Learn. This week we're going to cover over feature lines, kind of the basics of feature lines, and we're going to do some kind of advanced grading with feature lines, kind of the basics of a parking lot. And with that, I'm going to show how to edit your feature lines. So we're kind of using it in a real life situation. Feature lines were introduced into the Civil 3D community in 2005 with the first release of Civil 3D. Uh, before 2005, the only things that came close to your feature lines in AutoCAD was something called 3D polylines, which is different than polylines. We still have polylines, 3D polylines, and now feature lines in our Civil 3D program. Today we're going to cover over the difference between all the different types of lines, kind of the real basic element of it. And then we're also going to cover over how to edit elevations for each of those and why they're so different. First thing, what is the difference between a line, a polyline, 3D polyline, feature line? Basically a line, all of the lines that are here on the screen have the different types of lines. One's a line, one's a polyline, one's a 3D polyline, one's a feature line. They all look identical, don't they? Well, they're all different in many different ways. First off, this first section here is a line. What a line is everybody knows it's a 2D representation of a line, and you have to have multiple segments to draw an object. Well, a polyline is a 2D line that continues, so it has multiple vertices in that line. A 3D polyline is just like a polyline, except for each vertices has a different elevation. Now, a polyline, you can define an elevation to it with no problem, but the thing is with a line, you cannot. They have a z value to it. In a 3D polyline, you can actually change different vertices to have different elevations. See, 1 is 0 elevation, 2 is at 2, and 3 is this 3. So you can have different elevations to that. Now, what is a feature line? Feature line is a continuous line that has elevations at different vertices. So what the heck is the difference between a 3D polyline and a feature line? Well, a feature line is kind of like what we just said. A feature line is a line that is used in different features in Civil 3D. A feature line is used in objects like corridors, grading objects, partials, and even surfaces. Okay? So a feature line is actually a kind of a feature line. Also, they're a lot easier to edit and update than 3D polylines are. Like you showed before, if you wanted to edit a 3D polyline elevations, you'd have to actually click on the 3D polyline, head over to properties, click on each individual vertices, and change the property elevation. Okay? In a feature line, if you actually click on the feature line and head over to your properties, it doesn't give you any options over here on changing elevations individually. But you can actually right-click and use something called Elevation Editor to change elevations of each and every vertices in that feature line, even change the grade breaks and the length if you needed to. Also, there's tools up here for editing, which I'll get to later. So it becomes a little bit easier to use and to update. Also, you can use grading groups with a feature line and so forth like that. In the past, on Land Desktop, you did your grading groups, or your grading with a 3D polyline. So, now that we know the difference between all the different types of lines, let's go into how to create feature lines. Now, if you don't have it up yet on your screen, there is a toolbar by the name of feature lines that you need to bring up on your screen. I have it here on my ribbons, but I'm going to bring it up so everybody can see it. Civil feature lines. That's how you get to it pretty much. So here is our lovely feature line toolbar. We are going to be on this feature line toolbar for pretty much the entire Lunch and Learn. So go ahead and have it open. Are you ready to go? And work through this exercise a number of times, and we can have fun with this one. All right. Creating a feature line. There's two ways to create a feature line. One is by an object, and the second one is just simply drawing a feature line. Okay. On the toolbars, you have both create by an object and draw a feature line. Another way to get to those particular tools is under grading. Draw feature line, create feature line from object. There's also create feature line from alignment, which we're not going to go through this class, but we'll go through in the future. I like to use the toolbar. So what I'm going to do first is actually draw in a polyline. So now that we have our lovely 2D our polyline here, our basic 2D polyline, we need to create that into a feature line. Up here on your toolbars, you'll see create object or create from object. Select that lovely button. You'll get to the point where you select your object, which you can, if you look at the bottom, you can actually tell the difference of what you can actually use. You can select the line, an arc, a polyline, a 3D polyline to convert to a feature line. Once you do that, press enter, give it a site. We're actually going to create a new site, and we're just going to call this Lunch and Learn for today. Usually when I create a feature line, I keep the names normal and everything. Usually there's not so many feature lines in a site recently. I actually have to give it a name, but sometimes it's a lot easier to give it a name. The style, kind of, you can do the exact same thing. Change the style later on if you want to. Layer, I'm going to keep it the same. And you know what? I'm going to erase the existing entity. Click OK, and you should see it change color to a lovely feature line. That's how you create it by an object. Create a feature line by drawing. Select create drawing or draw feature line. It'll bring that exact same create feature line box up. Select OK and just start clicking away. Every time you click at an endpoint, it should ask for elevation, slope, difference, whatever you need. It has different tools there, which I would suggest you to adventure in. And of course, I'm just going to enter through to make that lovely feature line. And of course, they move just like lines, so you can actually change the grips if you need it. All right. Now that we've gone through creating different feature lines in different ways, I'm going to show you how to create a parking lot, or how to create grading for a parking lot with no information at all. All right. Let me erase these feature lines. Here is our lovely parking lot. Now the only thing that's actually in this drawing are the lines that you see here, and they're all on the elevation 0. All right. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a surface and everything. And if you notice, I'm going to go over here to my tool space. There are no surfaces in this drawing at all. We're starting completely from scratch. There's nothing in this drawing except for the lines that you see here and the different styles that we have. All right. Well, let's create a lovely little parking lot. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go 2% down to the center of the parking lot, and we're going to flow along the center or along the back of all of the parking spaces here down to a point here that is the lowest point in the surface. All right. So what we're going to do first is make a lovely rectangle around the entire site, and which once you use the rectangle command, it makes a polyline. And I'm actually going to create a feature line from that polyline so that we can start using it. So we go to the exact same thing, create from object, select our polyline, right click, give us a lovely dialog box that we need here, place all the settings, Click OK, and now you have your new feature line. Now if you notice, there's only 4 vertices on all 4 corners of this, and we need a point about right there that would give us a low point. Alright, now while I'm doing this grading, I'm actually going to split my screen here in the middle so that you can see the 3D and the 2D representation of what we're doing. Alright, zoom this out just a little bit. Rotate this to a 3D object. So now you can see this pretty. Of course, our feature line is in on 0 elevation. So now we need to add this point down here in the middle of this rectangle. On your feature line toolbars, you'll see Insert Elevation Point. Once you select that, it'll ask you to select the object. And of course, we're going to do the intersection of the feature line that we just created and the center line of the 2 parking lots. Once you select that, it asks for a specific elevation. I'm going to put in something like 100, 108, just an odd number, 108.35. Alright, now if you've noticed, once I've hit enter, on the right side of the screen, you should see that feature line point straight up like a pyramid. I'm actually going to zoom, extend this so that you can see that point right here actually went up to 108.35, which is going to be our low point. Now what we need to do is actually bring this point up equal to 2% sloping up this way. So from the center line here up, we're going to go 2%. Again, on your lovely toolbar for your feature line, you should see a tool about right here called Set Grade / Slope Between Points. Now what this does is you actually select point A and point B, and you can actually put a specific slope between the 2 points. Such as I'm going to select that, click our lovely feature line. We're going to start on that low point. That's for a specific starting point. Select it. Going to give you that elevation. And I'm going to select the end point, which is up at the top. Now it's going to give you different options such as grade, slope, elevation, and difference. We're going to do a grade, and we're going to go positive 2%. And now you should see on our right screen that lovely feature line popped up. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to go from this point here up 2%. So we're going to use the exact same tool. Select our feature line, grab point A, press enter for correct elevation, grab point B, and give a 2% slope. Boom. Now you don't have to do that with just one line. You can do it for a whole section of lines at one time. So we're going to do that from this point here all the way around. So we're going to select a feature line, select our starting point, which will give us the elevation, and go all the way to the end point that we need, which is here, and give that lovely 2%, and boom. Now we've got a feature line which we can use as our surface to start creating our workable surface for the inside of that parking lot. Now that we have that, we need to actually add this into what we're going to call a temporary surface. We're going to delete the surface later on in this Lunch and Learn, but for now we're going to temporarily add a surface. So grab our surface, create one. We're just going to call it surface. We're actually going to give it 1 of 5 design. Actually, I'm going to edit this real quick so that we do not see the boundary at all. Alright, now we got that. We have that set. Okay. I have now a lovely surface. Now we need to add a feature line into a surface. We can do one or two ways. One way that we did on older software, so we had to go to tool space under Surface, Definition, right-click on Break Lines, and click Add. Once you hit OK, you select your feature line, and it went to your surface. Or now, new in 2009, you can actually select your feature line, right-click, and right there in your tools you have Add to Surface as Break Line. Select the surface in which you need to add it. Place it in there. Lovely information. Now we have a surface that we can use and we can start on our design. Now you're thinking, okay, what's the point in having a rectangle with a low point and 2%? We still need, curb and gutter. Well, that's the point. Now we have a surface to actually compare lines to that. Okay? So now we're going to create a feature line by an object, and we're going to use the back of curve to do that. We're going to select the back of curve, and look, now we have, in our settings, you want to also make sure that, in this case, you don't erase existing. Once you select OK, now if you look, we have a feature line. But wait a minute, that feature line is nowhere near our surface. Well, how could that add to our surface? Well, we simply use a tool on our feature line toolbar called, boom, Elevations from a Surface. We select that tool. It'll ask you for the surface, and it will also ask to insert intermediate grade points. For this section and this point, I would actually use that because you're going around these curves, and you need as many little points that you may need for that to get the surface just right. All right. Click OK, select your feature line, and boom, if you looked at the right screen while I was doing that, the feature line actually popped up right to the surface. And you're thinking, okay, well that's great, we've got it now, a feature line to the surface. Now we need to make the face of curb, the bottom face of curb, and the gutter. Now what tool do we need to use now? We are actually going to use this tool right here called Step Offset. Once you select your step offset, what this allows you to do is it allows you to create another feature line from a featured line using different elevations. All right. So select offset. We're actually going to select it here in plan view so it's easier to do. Select offset distance. We're actually going to select 0.5 for the face of curve. Select object. It's easier to do it here in the 3D view. Select offset side, right here. We're going to do the elevation difference of negative, because we're going down, 0.5. Boom, that is the bottom face of curve. Now we need to make the top face of curve, which now in the software, if you actually put a feature line on top of another feature line, the new feature line will take over all the elevations of the old one. So if we do the same thing of offsetting 0.5 with a 0 elevation, it'll actually drop it to the feature line that we just created. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the exact same offset tool, but instead of 0.5, we're going to do 0.49. Select the top of curve. Select the outside, and we're going to go 0.00. Whoops. Let's undo that real quick. Let's try that from another angle. Offset, 0.49. Select the object. Offset side, this side. Elevation difference at 0. And boom. Now we have our top face of curve. Now we just got to do the gutter, and you do the gutter pretty much the exact same way. 1.5 difference. Select your bottom. Select side. Select elevation difference 0.125, and now we have our gutter. So now we have top of curve, face of curve top, face of curve bottom, and gutter. Simple, right? Okay, we can easily add, if I add these particular feature lines to the surface, temporary surface that we have now, you'll kind of see and picture exactly why we did that. Even though we're actually going to delete the temporary surface, at least this will give you a good glimpse of what we're doing. Add it to that surface, click OK. And you notice as we do that, you'll see the surface change here. Okay? Select here, add. All right, bottom. Now you'll actually see a big difference change here. And one more. Now if you look, we actually graded this whole entire site. Select your object. We're going to 3D view this sucker so we can see it. And if you look, now our surface, go to a good spot here. Now our surface has a top of curb going down 0.5, and a gutter along with all the grading inside that parking lot. Beautiful. Well, since this is a temporary surface, you actually want to take the grading out to the existing surface. I'm going to show you real quick grading tools on how to do that and to create a surface by it really quickly. I just really wanted to go over feature lines today, but we're going to do this real quick grading tools so that it goes on to the existing surface. Since we don't have an existing surface in this file, we're actually going to go to a certain distance so that it's no problem. Let's actually delete the outline feature line, and we're actually going to delete the surface as well that we just built, because all the information is within these feature lines right here. Now that we have the feature lines. All right, I'm going to go to grading and create grading. Grading creation tools. I'm going to go by distance. First I'm going to do a grading group, and I'm going to automatically create it. This is kind of something that we're just going to do real quick so that I can kind of show you a finished product. Grade from a distance. Continue. Grading side, we're going to do that side. The entire length, yes. Distance, we're going to do 20. Slope, 2 to 1, and it's going to grade out 2 to 1 for 20 feet from that feature line. And there we have it. 2 to 1, 20 feet from that feature line. Now we need to add the feature lines that we created using the temporary surface into our new surface that we just created using grading group. And you do it the exact same way. Now, I know I did this a few minutes ago, but again, look at the left side of the screen. You'll see the surface update as I add in the feature lines. Select here, and one more. Beautiful. Now we have a full-on surface, three-dimensional surface, and we graded a whole parking lot, and it has been, I don't know how long it's been, 20 minutes or so. We graded a full site with no problem. And let's take a look at this in our lovely object viewer. And if you look here closely, you'll see we have full curb and gutter in our surface. Beautiful. I hope you took something from this lunch and learn on feature lines. I would stress to you to play around with feature lines. Use your feature line toolbar. It has plenty of tools in there to edit and to change it. There's also a section for labels that I have not even gotten to, along with time feature lines to corridors, time feature lines to alignments, getting feature lines from corridors, getting feature lines from alignments, and all of that good jazz. We have only touched the surface of feature lines. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will see you next time.